Lecture 5.2 will be quite long, I believe, but I think it's going to be a very valuable experience because we are going to get really fine-grained about what you should be doing in your body paragraphs. So the purpose is to understand how to thoroughly develop an idea in a body paragraph, and we're going to focus on topic sentences, how to create or how to think about using a logical progression of ideas in your sentences, how to integrate quotes from sources, and also how to use illustrations and examples. So body paragraph development is extremely important because remember, we're trying to make one major point, one argument throughout the paper, and you're going to do that in a systematic way by really giving lots of examples, evidence, all this kind of thing. How do you achieve this purpose? How do you make a single subpoint of a larger point within a body paragraph? Well, you start with a topic sentence, which serves as the headline and announcement for what is the point of this paragraph. So after that, then you're going to give little bite-sized pieces of information. So you're leading your reader straight through each idea you're going to give them. They have a way to understand from point to point what you're saying. You want to make sure that that's done very logically. Where should I start if I want to make a point at the end? What's the best place to begin, and how do I lead them through all of that? You end up needing to say more than you think you do. You'll also want to use examples and evidence to illustrate what you're saying. And then you're going to emphasize the most important features that will help the readers understand. So let's start with the topic sentences. I am very much a stickler about topic sentences because I think that even if you have great information in your paragraph, if you do not tell your readers why you're giving them that information, then they're going to be confused. So a topic sentence is the first sentence in the paragraph, and when you're using a student essay genre, it means that you need to say very clearly what is one of the major ideas from your thesis statement that you're going to be discussing in this particular paragraph. So you try not to use the exact same words from your thesis statement if possible. You're going to use similar words, but you're going to make a direct connection between that thesis and the paragraph that you're writing. It needs to be highly specific. And this means that readers who are, ingesting your piece, who are reading your piece, should know exactly why you're discussing what you're discussing. So let's look at one thesis statement from a student paper. Instagram is a beneficial way to meet people, but ultimately it is detrimental to relationship health and longevity. So that's a very clear thesis. He's saying that, there's one function of Instagram, and that is to create these connections, and it's good for that, but it does not lead to a long, healthy romantic relationship. Here's the first sentence of one of his paragraphs. When it comes to the process of dating, the system that naturally fell in place has been in effect since the beginning of time. So I appreciate that he's beginning and he's going to use some evidence from a source that talks about how the original process for dating has all these steps, but that when you use Instagram, it removes some of those steps and it intensifies and increases the speed of those steps. But he does not tell us that at the beginning of this paragraph, so it seems a little confusing when he starts talking about meeting someone before marriage and the system that's fallen into place when we're supposed to be talking about Instagram. So it doesn't have a clear connection to the thesis. This topic sentence, the first sentence of his paragraph, I do not see how this information and this information is connected. Your topic sentence, that is the first sentence of your paragraph, needs to refer back to what you're talking about in your thesis. It needs to have a clear connection. And it needs to act as a headline. So all of this information might be important to have, but it has to come after you explain to the reader what you're doing in that paragraph. So here's how they revised this. Instagram is a beneficial way to meet people, but ultimately it is detrimental to the health, relationship, and longevity. They said, okay, the new system for dating has sped up the processes that occur in a relationship, and this has a negative effect. Okay, this is an improvement. It's a better connection because it talks about this negative effect, right? But it still needs more clarity. What about this new system for dating? What do you mean by that? And how does Instagram fit into that? So finally, the final draft has: using Instagram to find romantic partners has sped up the processes that occur in a relationship, and this speed has a negative effect on relationship health. So this is a huge improvement. You see that we have a clear thesis statement here, and then your topic sentence, your first sentence of that next paragraph explains exactly what part of your thesis statement you're going to be focusing on in that body paragraph. This is a very, very good topic sentence, and it's a great example that you might want to come back to as you're writing your own. The next thing I want to emphasize is how you need to create a logical progression of ideas in your paragraphs. So each sentence needs to have a piece of information that you then pick up and discuss more in the next sentence. And then each sentence after that needs to have a way to connect to the sentence before it. So you just need to lead your readers through the information. If you're working on deciding, does my paragraph have connections between the sentences, one way you might check is to highlight the concepts that are the same in each of the sentences. Do you see a connection between that? So here's an example of a body paragraph about someone describing what's happening in an academic article they read. Shrestova describes one of the major struggles with this politics is collectivism. Okay, so they introduce the idea of collectivism here, and then they pick up collectivism in the next sentence. So there is a connection there. Collectivism happens when activism organizations use social media to spread their message to a large audience. Okay, though many new people may become aware of the organization's message. Okay, so there's a connection between this sentence. They're talking about the message of an organization, and then this sentence also discusses the message of the organization. So you're seeing how each of these highlighted things show a connection between the sentences. Some idea in one sentence needs to be present in the previous one and needs to connect with something in the following sentence. So let's look at an example where that did not really happen. I tried to use this highlighting feature and find similarities between all of the sentences, but I was unable to do so. So I highlighted Instagram, and then I highlighted detrimental, and I highlighted relationship health and longevity, because that's really what this is all about. So Instagram is the platform. Detrimental is saying that it's a negative thing. It's not good. There's problems going on. And then this is the topic we're discussing. So for people who aren't into hookup culture, social media, so Instagram is social media, but it's slightly different, right? So we see a little bit of a different idea here, and then is not beneficial for meeting people. Well, meeting people is different from health of the relationship and its longevity. So I think I could have made this green because detrimental and not beneficial. We do see a connection there. But I'm seeing disconnect between the topics here. We're talking about Instagram and relationship health and longevity. Here we're talking about social media and meeting people. Those are different things. So I don't see a clear connection between these two sentences. I also see that this one, Instagram, okay, so there's a connection there to this idea, has changed the way people see each other, and it opens up judgment. Okay, that seems to be detrimental, so that's kind of participating. But then we change topics and say, some people decide whether they're going to date someone or not. Well, this is also different because this is relationship health and longevity. That means that you're already partnered and you're just, you're helping your relationship stay on track. Whereas this one's about meeting people, whereas this one's about deciding to date someone or not. So you see how you would need to do some work to make these connect. These simply do not logically connect to one another. They're different themes and topics in each sentence. It's really hard to follow. It's hard to make sense of it. So this person revised and said, and this is their revised version. And then it leads to this thesis statement. So that was an introduction. Now, let's discuss more about how to develop these body paragraphs. When you're thinking about incorporating sources like quotes and information from the academic articles or information from your popular articles, you want between 80 to 95% of your paper to be written in your own unique voice. You as a student gets to use the information you've learned and translate it and paraphrase it and use your own ideas and arguments. So you're explaining the text and your ideas in your own words. This really should be how you mainly write your essay. The readers are coming to your piece to get your thoughtful take on this issue. But you do want to quote some of the time. So between 5 and 20% of the time, you want to use quotes. And so it supplements the paraphrasing and it gives emphasis. If you're trying to make one point, you want to really say, here's a big way to make that point. I'm going to emphasize this and show a direct quote. It also is a way when you say, look, I am never going to find a perfect way to word this. I'm going to use someone else's wording. And also, when you throw in those quotes and they come from good sources, it's demonstrating to your readers that you are looking at a lot of information. You've done good research. So how do we do this integration of quotes into paragraphs? You've got to do it. It helps you make your point. You are basically trying to say, look, I actually did the work here. But if you just throw in the quotes, that's not enough. You have to introduce why you're using the quote. And then once you put the quote in, you need to explain what the point of it is. You cannot just drop a quote in and be done with it. So before you actually put in a quote, you need to set up the scene of whether it's a movie, whether it's an issue. You need to introduce who said this, and then you need to give the quote and then discuss what that means and why it helps you make the point that you're trying to make in your paragraph. So here are some ways that you can actually introduce these quotes into your writing. And I'm going to leave this here. I'm not going to go over this too much because you can go back to these slides and study them a bit more. But if you're talking about how do I actually use punctuation and craft sentences that do this, you can use a complete sentence with a colon before the quote. You can use no complete sentence and just use a comma before the quote. You can make it a part of your own sentence. And let me tell you, I very much value this number 3 because it shows that you're using pieces of it and you're lending credibility, but you're also weaving it into your own voice. So when you simply take a piece of a quote and put it into your own sentences, that's one of my favorite parts. And this one is also an interesting way. And it's where you're just taking little parts and plugging it in. So I really endorse 3 and 4 because it keeps you honest. It keeps you from putting only quotes in your work, and it helps you pick out just the most important parts. So putting it all together, here's an example of a paragraph that I think does a pretty good job of introducing quotes, of having a great topic sentence, of creating logical progression of ideas. So you can study this. One way Instagram can harm relationships is by fueling envy in them and causing trust issues. And so this is going to be green, and that is sort of highlighted throughout. We also have introduction of studies and quotes. The study investigated how this works, and then they give us some quotes for this. I bolded this because I think that there's room for improvement. I think that this is something that we can improve this. But you'll notice that this person is doing a very good job of really integrating quotes and information, giving readers logical progression of ideas. So the sentences have that clear connection. It doesn't just use only quotes all the time. This person clearly thought about what they were writing about and used their own words. It references sources often. So it references the study here. It has this citation here. And it uses the language and language of the student mostly and paraphrases. So finally, you guys just get started writing. You have a whole week to write this draft. I think that, it's going to be a great opportunity to just try something. You don't have to start at the very beginning. You could start with one of the body paragraphs. You could start with the conclusion if you wanted to. Feel free to go back to these slides to look for examples, look for advice. And do the best you can. Your first draft needs to be complete. It needs to have all of the elements required. However, you might still have a lot of questions about it. You might think that you can do better and improve, and that's because you probably can, because a first draft is just a starting point. You're just going to do your best in this one and look forward to the revision and the feedback later. So, much luck getting started. I can't wait to read your writing.